What's more expensive than a $180 bar tab? A swim across the Nile River to avoid paying it. That's right, we've got a story about two whiskey-swilling friends who thought they could dodge their debt by diving into crocodile-infested waters, only to discover that liquid courage doesn't translate to swimming skills. Hello everyone, welcome to Wow Amazing. In this video, we will go through our Volume 22 of Top 10 Most Stupid Darwin Award Winners. But before we begin, we would like you guys to subscribe to Wow Amazing and hit the notification bell so you do not miss out on amazing and entertaining content that will surely get you amazed. Now get ready, because this volume is absolutely packed with tales that'll make you question humanity's survival as a species. Number 10, blown away by stupidity. Let's start our countdown with a story that proves why warning signs exist and what happens when you ignore them completely. It's July 16th, 2001, and we meet an assistant plant manager at Blackledge Emulsions who has a simple problem. He needs to check how much asphalt emulsion remains in a massive 10,000-gallon tank. Most people might use a gauge, a dipstick, or any number of safe measuring methods. But our Darwin Award winner has what he thinks is a more direct approach. He decides that the best way to visually survey the tank's contents is to cut a hole in it with an acetylene torch. Yes, you heard that correctly. He's going to use an open flame to create a window into a tank filled with combustible materials. Now, this isn't a case of unclear labeling or hidden dangers. Warning signs are prominently displayed on the side of the tank, clearly stating that the contents are combustible. Ignoring safety rules, common sense, and chemistry, he lights his torch and starts cutting the tank. The moment his torch breaches the tank, the combustible emulsion explodes with tremendous force. The blast is so powerful that it launches our would-be inspector 93 feet through the air, turning him into an unwilling human projectile. An OSHA representative later states that no safety precautions had been taken before the cutting operation began, which might be the understatement of the year. From workplace explosions to creative debt avoidance, our next story proves that some escape plans are more dangerous than the situation you're trying to escape from. Number 9, the bar tab escape. It's May 15th, 2001, Cairo, Egypt, where two whiskey-swilling friends find themselves facing a bar tab that has reached a sobering $180. Rather than accept responsibility for their drinking spree, they hatch what they think is a brilliant escape plan. Their strategy is beautifully simple. Down one last drink for courage, jump into the Nile River, and swim to the far shore where Egyptian law enforcement presumably can't touch them. But the plan has one major flaw that neither man has considered. Alcohol and swimming are a notoriously deadly combination, especially when you're already intoxicated enough to think river swimming is a viable debt collection strategy. As they launch their aquatic escape, one of the men, a 27-year-old taxi driver, quickly discovers that his whiskey-impaired judgment has seriously overestimated his swimming abilities. The Nile River, which has been claiming victims for thousands of years, adds another name to its list. He drowns en route to freedom, successfully avoiding the $180 bill in the most permanent way possible. His debt has been permanently canceled, though not quite in the way he had planned. Meanwhile, his companion actually makes it to the far shore, a few hundred meters away, probably feeling quite clever about his successful escape. But his win doesn't last long. Police are already there, called by the clearly annoyed nightclub staff. The survivor is arrested and presumably stuck with the entire bar tab, adding insult to the injury of losing his friend. The lesson of this story is clear. If you're going to dodge a bar tab, don't drink yourself senseless first. You might die, or even worse, end up paying for everyone's drinks. But not all expensive lessons involve drowning in rivers. Sometimes the deadliest costs come from the most innocent purchases, like when a simple craving for a cold soda turns into a battle you simply cannot win. Number 8, death by vending machine. December 12th, 1998, Bishop's University in Quebec, Canada, where 19-year-old Kevin was celebrating the end of final exams with friends. After the stress of academic testing, he probably felt he deserved a little reward, maybe a cold Coca-Cola to cap off his successful semester. But when the vending machine took his money without delivering his drink, Kevin wasn't about to let a mere machine get the better of him. He just finished finals, so one tricky soda machine should be easy. Kevin began shaking the 420-kilogram Coke machine with increasing determination. Now, most people might give the machine a gentle nudge, maybe try the coin return, or simply accept the loss and move on. But Kevin had consumed enough alcohol to make his decision-making as impaired as his coordination. His blood alcohol level was slightly over the legal driving limit, which was apparently enough to convince him that he could physically intimidate a machine that weighed nearly half a ton. As Kevin continued his aggressive shaking technique, physics prepared to deliver its own lesson about the relationship between mass, gravity, and human fragility. The massive machine, tired of being manhandled, finally gave in to Kevin's demands, just not in the way he had hoped. It toppled over, crushing Kevin beneath its considerable weight and asphyxiating him instantly. The ultimate irony? Even as it fell over and killed him, the vending machine still refused to release a single can. Kevin had died in vain, the victim of a machine more stubborn than he was. According to the coroner's report, toppled vending machines have caused at least 35 deaths and 140 injuries in the past 20 years, making them surprisingly effective killers for devices designed to dispense snacks. Of course, Kevin wasn't the only student whose poor judgment turned recreation into tragedy. Sometimes the most dangerous rides don't require coins or electricity, just gravity, momentum, and a complete misunderstanding of basic physics. Number 7. The Rubbish Bin Racers. March 1st, 2000, Dunedin, New Zealand, home to Baldwin Street, officially listed in the Guinness Book of World Records as the steepest street in the world. At a 38-degree incline, it's challenging enough for cars with proper brakes and steering. But for our Darwin Award winners, it looked like the perfect sledding opportunity. Anna and her friend, both university students with apparently more enthusiasm than judgment, decided that midnight was the perfect time for an impromptu downhill adventure. Their vehicle of choice? A two-wheeled rubbish bin that they dragged to the top of this record-breaking incline. Now, most people see the world's steepest street and think about how hard it is to build or drive on. These students saw a giant slide, ready for a brave ride. When they climbed into their makeshift sleigh and shoved off into the darkness, beginning what they probably imagined would be an exhilarating ride to remember forever. Residents were awakened by what they described as a hell of a racket that went on for some time as the rubbish bin gathered speed during its uncontrolled descent. The noise level suggests they were traveling at considerable velocity by the time physics intervened. Their 50-meter ride down Baldwin Street ended fast when their cart crashed into a parked trailer. The crash was terrible. Anna, 19, died on the spot, and her friend had serious head injuries, though the report joked it was hard to tell, considering how bad their choices were to begin with. Their feat did not make it into the Guinness Book of World Records, as the top speed of their rubbish bin remains unknown. However, their story stands as a permanent reminder that some records aren't worth pursuing. While those students were racing toward disaster on wheels, other people were finding equally creative ways to turn routine activities into deadly games. Take, for instance, what happens when trained professionals decide that workplace safety is negotiable. Number 6. Sweet release from life. January 1st, 2001, Illinois, where University of Illinois police officers Colin and his partner have developed an unusual method for dealing with workplace frustrations. They've invented a game called Sweet Release, also known as 65% disability and $1 Million Wound. The concept is simple but spectacularly dangerous. Exchange duty weapons to blow off steam about their employer's policies. It's like Russian roulette for people who think regular Russian roulette isn't quite stupid enough. On New Year's Eve, as people worldwide are celebrating new beginnings, Colin's partner hands over his Glock semi-automatic with the traditional phrase, "Sweet Release." They've played this game before without incident, but this night is different. Colin takes the weapon and utters what become his famous last words, "I wonder if this is loaded." Instead of checking safely, he decides to test his hypothesis in the most direct way possible, by sticking the gun in his mouth and pulling the trigger. 5 witnesses, including 2 fellow officers and 3 women, all agree that Colin is his normal, happy self and hasn't intended suicide. He's simply playing his final round of Sweet Release with characteristic recklessness. Although Colin has been drinking for several hours, his blood alcohol level of 0.09% is barely over the legal limit, high enough to dull reflexes, but not enough to excuse such spectacular ignorance of basic weapon safety. The man has worked for Charleston Police and Champaign County Sheriff's Office before joining University Police. In all his years in law enforcement, he's apparently never absorbed the cardinal rule, always assume every weapon is loaded. Number 5. Tea time tragedy. Speaking of poor timing, our next story takes us to New Zealand's treacherous roads, where one woman's dedication to afternoon tea proves stronger than her commitment to staying alive. January 18, 2001, on the west coast of New Zealand, where narrow winding roads climb and descend hills at angles that challenge even experienced drivers, a Christchurch woman with little patience for these dangerous curves is about to learn her final lesson about prioritizing refreshments over road safety. Nothing, absolutely nothing, can keep this woman from her afternoon tea that day. Not treacherous mountain roads, not steep precipices, and certainly not common sense about appropriate beverage preparation timing. While navigating one of these challenging highway stretches, she decides waiting until reaching her destination is simply unacceptable. She begins preparing hot tea in her moving vehicle, apparently convinced that multitasking behind the wheel is perfectly reasonable for satisfying her craving. As she focuses on brewing the perfect cuppa, complete with thermos, mug, and tea bags, her attention wanders from the minor detail of keeping her car on the road. Her vehicle plunges over a precipice into a creek below, ending both her journey and tea preparation in the most permanent way possible. When searchers find her body 3 days later, the scene tells the complete story. She's still holding tea bags, with a mug wedged against the steering wheel and thermos beneath her feet. Her commitment to afternoon tea has been absolute, right to the very end. Investigators note there are no brake marks on the road, suggesting she never realizes her mistake until it's too late. Road safety warnings like tea brewing are matters of timing and attention. But some people ignore warnings that are even more obvious and urgent, like the ones Mother Nature posts about thin ice and freezing water. Number 4. Fishing on thin ice. March 2001, Lake Erie, Ohio, where 3 men were hoping to catch a few fish, but caught instead a fatal chill that would end their fishing careers permanently. These weren't beginner fishermen unaware of local conditions. They knew that winters hadn't been cold enough to allow safe ice fishing on the lake for at least 3 years. But our Darwin Award winners apparently believed that warnings were meant for other people, not serious fishing enthusiasts like themselves. They loaded up their all-terrain vehicle and headed out onto what they hoped was solid ice, despite poor visibility caused by a morning snowstorm. The thin sheet of ice was surrounded by open patches of water, which they either couldn't see or chose to ignore. Their fishing expedition proceeded about as well as you might expect when you drive heavy machinery onto ice that experts have declared unsafe. To no one's surprise but theirs, their ATV suddenly plunged through the ice. Hours later, divers retrieved their bodies from 10 feet of 34-degree water, along with their fishing equipment and what remained of their optimism about ice conditions. The most remarkable part of this story isn't the tragedy itself, but what happened afterward. Even as rescue workers were removing 3 bodies in body bags, dozens of other fishermen were still heading out onto the same dangerous ice. These fishermen ignored nature's warnings, but our next Darwin Award winner took things a step further by ignoring divine warnings. After all, when you're stealing from a house of worship, you're not just risking legal trouble, you're gambling with forces beyond human law. Number 3, generator thief gets chilled. February 24th, 2001, Des Moines, Iowa, where 2 teenagers learned that divine intervention doesn't always come in the form you might expect. 16-year-old Travis and his accomplice had decided that Grace Church possessed something they needed, a generator that could be easily stolen and presumably sold for quick cash. Their plan seemed straightforward. Get on the roof, lower the generator to the ground, and disappear into the night with their ill-gotten gains. Travis positioned himself on the church roof and began lowering the stolen generator down to his waiting partner below. Everything was proceeding according to their criminal plan until divine justice decided to intervene in the most direct way possible. As Travis worked to lower the heavy equipment, his jacket became entangled in the electrical cord. The cord wrapped around him and pulled him over the ledge, leaving him dangling precariously in the freezing rain. Now at this point, Travis had 2 obvious escape options. He could have used the sharp knife in his pocket to cut himself free from the cord. Alternatively, he could have simply wriggled out of his jacket and dropped safely to the ground. Inexplicably, Travis chose neither option. Perhaps the irony of being trapped by the very item he was trying to steal had short-circuited his problem-solving abilities. His accomplice, unaware of Travis's predicament, waited exactly 15 minutes before abandoning his dangling partner to the elements. The surviving thief apparently had a very precise schedule for criminal activities and wasn't about to let a missing partner disrupt his timeline. Travis remained trapped in the freezing rain, suspended from Grace Church like a macabre wind chime, until exposure claimed his life. Divine justice aside, earthly karma has its own way of dealing with thieves. Sometimes the universe delivers poetic justice so perfectly timed, you'd think it was scripted by someone with a very dark sense of humor. Number 2. Jet Ski Justice. July 26, 2001. Lake Tahoe, Nevada, where two men discovered that stolen vehicles come with unexpected risks, particularly when you don't know how to operate them properly. The story began when investigators found two bodies at the popular lake destination. Initial examinations suggested they were homicide victims. One man was severely disfigured by facial wounds, while the other appeared to have been shot. But as investigators dug deeper into the case, they uncovered a truth that was both more ironic and more fitting than murder. These weren't innocent victims of violent crime. They were the architects of their own demise. The men had stolen a jet ski from a local marina, probably congratulating themselves on acquiring expensive recreational equipment without the expensive price tag. Their plan was simple: take the jet ski for a joyride and disappear before anyone noticed it was missing. Unfortunately for them, successful jet ski theft requires more than just the ability to steal. It also requires basic knowledge of navigation, local geography, and the fundamental principle that high-speed watercraft and total darkness don't mix well. Unfamiliar with the layout of the lake and operating in pitch-black conditions, they were essentially flying blind across the water at high speed. Their nocturnal joyride ended abruptly when they crashed into a nearby dock at tremendous velocity. The impact was catastrophic. One man died instantly from a broken neck, while his partner crawled to shore, where he too expired from his injuries. Their theft had lasted just long enough to kill them both. The gunshot wound and facial disfigurement that had initially suggested homicide were actually the results of their high-speed collision with an immovable dock. Justice had been served by physics rather than law enforcement. Their story stands as a reminder that sometimes the best security system for valuable property is the incompetence of the thieves trying to steal it. Number 1, the professor's final experiment. Finally, we reach our number 1 Darwin Award winner, a story that proves even highly educated individuals can make spectacularly poor decisions when it comes to laboratory safety. Our tale centers on a 44-year-old Russian professor of ecology at Oxford University, a man whose academic credentials suggested he understood the importance of careful scientific methodology and safety protocols. This distinguished professor had developed a rather unconventional habit during his research work. He regularly consumed laboratory ethanol as his personal beverage of choice. While this practice was already questionable from a safety standpoint, it had apparently worked out fine for him over the years. The professor's downfall came from his poor eyesight and his failure to read labels carefully, two problems that proved fatal when combined with his casual approach to laboratory drinking. On this particular day, he reached for what he thought was his usual bottle of ethanol. Instead, he grabbed a container of methanol, a common laboratory solvent that looks and smells virtually identical to ethanol, but is significantly more dangerous. According to scientists familiar with both substances, methanol is 5 times as toxic and 5 times less intoxicating than ethanol. This means that people who drink it inevitably consume too much, since they don't feel the effects until it's too late. With the casual confidence of someone who had done this many times before, the professor quaffed what he thought was a harmless aliquot of clear fluid from his beaker. As the methanol entered his system, it began its deadly work. By the time methanol symptoms are recognized, including vision problems and organ failure, treatment options like kidney dialysis are often too late to prevent permanent damage or death. The professor slowly succumbed to methanol poisoning, the victim of his own casual approach to laboratory safety and his failure to verify what he was drinking. His story serves as a reminder that academic achievement and common sense don't always go hand in hand, and that some laboratory experiments shouldn't involve the researcher as a test subject. Bonus entry: Juggling with Death. Like a scene from a circus performance gone horribly wrong, our bonus story features a college student whose party trick involved juggling the most dangerous props imaginable. May 2001, Vidovci, Croatia, where a university student decided to entertain his friends with a display of dexterity that would have made professional circus performers run for cover. At a party where most students were content with typical college entertainment, drinking, dancing, and questionable decision-making, our Darwin Award winner had something more explosive in mind. He had somehow acquired a hand grenade and decided that juggling it would make for spectacular party entertainment. Now, most people understand that explosives and entertainment don't mix well, but this student apparently saw an opportunity to combine his juggling skills with military ordnance. 6 fellow students gathered around to watch this unprecedented display of stupidity, apparently as fascinated by the spectacle as they were unconcerned about their own safety. The performance proceeded about as well as any reasonable person might expect when someone juggles explosives at a social gathering. Our entertainer dropped the ball, literally, and the hand grenade exploded. The juggler was killed instantly, earning his Darwin Award through sheer creative stupidity. But the 6 spectators who had chosen to watch someone juggle a live grenade also deserved recognition for their complete disregard of basic self-preservation instincts. All 6 onlookers were injured in the explosion, earning them at-risk survivor status for their decision to treat explosive juggling as acceptable party entertainment. This incident serves as a reminder that sometimes being part of the audience can be almost as dangerous as being the performer, especially when the performance involves military-grade explosives and amateur juggling skills. And there you have it, folks, 10 spectacular examples of why natural selection never takes a holiday, and why some people seem determined to remove themselves from the gene pool in the most creative ways possible. If you enjoyed today's countdown of catastrophic decision-making, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and ring that notification bell. Share this video with anyone who could benefit from these cautionary tales. You might just save a life by showing them what not to do, or at minimum, give them some perspective on their own problems. Until next time, think twice before that brilliant idea. Always read the labels on what you're drinking, and remember that Charles Darwin is always watching. This is Wow Amazing, reminding you that common sense is the best safety equipment you'll ever own. Stay smart out there, because evolution depends on it.